Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the fifth grade. Today we are going to be doing a reading lesson in which we are studying how to use an encyclopedia for some general research purposes. I know we've already talked about using the encyclopedia as it pertains to finding information about the person that we have researched for our language research project. We're going to get a little bit more specific about some other types of information that the encyclopedia can give us, and then learn a new tool that is found in the encyclopedia set. So we're going to start by talking about the continent of Africa. Rather large continent, not the largest, but I have brought the globe out to show us the continent of Africa, and that's going to lead me to my first encyclopedia. And I want to look in the A volume for Africa. It's going to be volume number 1, found on the side on the spine. So I looked up Africa. Now, my goal is I want to specifically learn about the animals of Africa. So when I look at this article about Africa, the very first page is telling me countries of Africa, and it gives it to me in a chart form. I see a lot of good information here about the countries of Africa, but that's not really what I'm looking for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scan the subheadings until I find something about animals. And this one starts with population. Turn the page. People, racial groups, ethnic groups, languages. Still nothing about animals. Religions, ways of life in northern Africa, rural life. You see how I am using my keyword at the top, Africa, and then it gives me some more specific information on some of the pages, not all of them. Like this one doesn't have anything new, but I also see when I'm scanning the article in bold print in front of some of the paragraphs, I see the subheadings. So this one is rural life. Still not finding anything about animals. Keep looking. City life, marriage and family, food and clothing, education. I still see my keyword Africa at the top, so I know I'm still talking about Africa. Rural life again, but that's on the south of the Sahara, so they're giving me another geographical district of Africa. Clothing, food and drink, education. I'm scanning the subheadings to try to find my information about animals. The arts, sculpture, music, literature, still not animals. The land, now I might be getting a little closer here. Land regions, maps, pictures on each page. Deserts, grasslands, forests, rivers and waterfalls, lakes, mountains. Here's climate. Another map about the climate zones of Africa. Keep looking. Now I see a subheading that's going to really help me hone in my search. Animals and plants. And I see several pictures here, native animals, native plants, and then I've marked this page ahead of time because what I'm doing here is looking at a map that is showing me the regions in which I could find specific animals that are related to Africa. And there's animals on here that you would find elsewhere in the world, but some of them are specifically native to just Africa. And we want to look at the giraffe because that's Mrs. Moranto's favorite. So if I wanted to find information about the giraffe, I'm probably going to see a little blurb about it in the continent of Africa information. But in order for me to get more specific, I'm going to want to go to the G encyclopedia to look up giraffe. And when I go to the G encyclopedia article for giraffe, I see the picture of the giraffe. And fun fact, giraffes are separated into their different breeds by their coat, by the pattern on their coat. When you look at giraffes, you often think they all have a pretty similar pattern, or it's maybe kind of like skin tone on a human, or spots on a cow or something like that. But cows are actually separated into breeds by their coat as well. So the pattern on the giraffe is what determines what breed it is. I think that's interesting information. All right, so my article on giraffes is a lot shorter than the one on Africa, because that's a more specific set of information. And I still see subheadings. All of these bold type titles, so to speak, in front of paragraphs are your subheadings. So if I go to my specific subheadings, I'm going to find more specific information, and I can scan that so that I don't have to read the entire article, but I'm only reading the part that actually pertains to what I'm looking for. Now, there's a tool that we can use with the encyclopedia that comes with every encyclopedia set that we've not really discussed before, and it's called a research guide index. Now, we've talked about the index before in our textbooks. An index is going to be where at the back of a book, it lists everything that is discussed in that book alphabetically. It's been particularly helpful to use our index in history class, especially if you're trying to look up information, because our history book is divided up into different sections. We have the history chapters, then we have the maps, and then we have the sections on the continent studies and the geographical studies, like when we were talking about mountains or deserts or types of water, things like that. So using an index in our history book helps us to hone in our search. Same thing with a set of encyclopedias. You're going to find this research guide index book as the last volume in any set of encyclopedias. You see the volume number 22 on the spine. So it's going to be the last one. All right, so if I'm looking in an encyclopedia index, hold this up closely so you can see in there, and you'll notice that the articles are listed alphabetically, just like they are in a dictionary or in the encyclopedias themselves. Say I am looking up spying. Okay, that's the one that our book is going to get us practice on in a moment. So spying, I go to the S's and I see my keywords at the top, standoff and Sputnik 1. So I know spy comes after Sputnik 1, but before standoff. So spy is going to be on this page. Now, while we're talking about this, I want you to turn in your work text to page 225. And at the top of the page, it's going to give us an exercise in using an encyclopedia index. So if you were researching horses, let's go to number 2, because I've skipped ahead to number 2. Number 2, if you were researching spying or espionage, an encyclopedia index would first refer you here's the word spy. Oops, scoot over. And the very first time I see the word spy, it says, see also espionage. So espionage is a French word that means spying, or the art of spying. Okay? So that's the first place it's going to refer me. Where else might the encyclopedia index direct you? So I'm going to, they already told me I was going to find espionage. So if I go back to my first entry, spy, see also espionage, what's the second entry? It's got a newspaper article about, is that Isaiah Thomas? Yep, Isaiah Thomas. Now, look after that, and it'll tell me that it's going to be in volume T on page 199. Now, there's going to be another entry that's about a book called The Spy, and it was written by James Cooper. And then, let's see. So that doesn't give me, oh, yeah, it does. The volume would be CI, because it's going to come, CI through, the C is also divided into 2 books because it's so many entries. So it's telling me it's in that volume of C on page 817. The next entry is The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. That's another book that was written. And it's found in volume E on page 254. I could also find it in volume L because it was written originally by a French person, and his last name was Le Carré, I guess. I don't know for sure. Page 152. So then after that, it goes to Joanna Spyri. And if you remember from a couple weeks ago, Joanna Spyri was an author that was mentioned in our history book. And she was from Switzerland. And she wrote the famous book Heidi. So that's moved on from spy. So that's all the information that they have about spy in this particular set of encyclopedias. So at this point, after I've used my encyclopedia index to answer number 2, it says, where else might you find an encyclopedia entry about spy? So it gives me, you could write down the newspaper called Spy by Isaiah Thomas. You could write down the book The Spy by James Fenimore Cooper. You could write down The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, which is another name of a book. And that's where we're going to find the words spy. Now, if I go on to espionage and look up espionage, once again, I'm going to use my keywords at the top to help me find the page, just like I would in the dictionary. The first entry word of the page is at the top of the page on the left, and the last entry word on the page is at the top of the page on the right. So just like in a dictionary. So if I'm looking up espionage right here, I'm going to find some more information this way about spying. So look in volume E on page 285. And I can see 3 articles about espionage. Okay. If I go back up to number 1, if you were researching horses, an encyclopedia index would first refer you to the horse entry. So I'm going to look up horse. Okay, horse is going to be found on this page. Where else might it direct me besides horse? Now, this is horsepower is the last word on the page. So it's going to be somewhere in here. Okay, starts at the top. Horse, animal with pictures. Now, it would also send me to animal, circus, evolution, hand, harness, horse racing, Kentucky, rodeo, a skull, I guess because they have a picture of a horse skull. So I have gymnastics. The horse is the name of one of the apparatus in the gymnastics field. The master of the horse, Royal Household of Great Britain, horse and buggy. So buggy would be a word that I could look up. There's a plant called the horse bean, another plant called the horse briar. So I have lots of entries here that I could use in that answer number 1. Where else might the index direct me? Okay, so here's another tool for you for researching. Now, if you look at the bottom of page 225, it gives you a sample index in green. So let's look at those questions. It says, how many articles give information about the FBI? So I want to look for FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation. And how many articles are there? 4. So I'm going to write the number 4 for number 1. Number 2, what is the entry word? The entry word is going to be at the top, intelligence service. What subheading titles are listed? Excuse me. So I have 3 subheading titles: Central Intelligence Agency, espionage, and Federal Bureau of Investigation. And then finally, under which subheading is criminal investigation listed? So if I look at criminal investigation, it's listed under Federal Bureau of Investigation. That's the subheading. The subheading is going to be the italicized part on this green one, the sample one. Now you're going to complete page 224 and then submit a picture of the completed page for a daily grade.